Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and today we are going to look at, if you need a crash course with Merfolk in today's modern metagame, we're going to look at this. We're going to check out basically all the top archetypes, and I'm going to give you a rundown, what you should be thinking about, what you should be prepared for, and what cards that you might want to be considering against those decks. And this video was inspired by Steven, one of my very loyal Twitch subscribers and patrons, so I better thank Steven for this. So, yeah, we're gonna go over the most important decks, and let's see what we can get through. Okay, so starting with the Uro piles. First off, I think one thing that makes Merfolk have a big edge in this metagame right now is that the Uro decks are almost a buy. I have beaten them almost all of them, and very comfortably, I must add. Basically, between Cavern of Souls on Merfolk plus Relic of Progenitus in the sideboard, you basically can't lose. And they do have, this one is Sultai. There's a lot of different versions between Bant, between Temur, and even Simic. But they all will run like some number of counterspells. This one's a little light on the counterspell pack. No, it's not too light. Between Mana Leak, Remand, Cryptic Command, Archmage's Charm, you want to just be able to play your creatures and like steamroll them. What other versions do we have here? I mean, you see, like, you know, there is blue-white, there's blue-green. I mean, this is just an amalgamation of, like, all the cards that they have in their deck. And you know what? We can basically go through most of these things. The most important card in the deck is Uro. I mean, there's nothing else actually matters. Because it's just control cards, we just usually play our normal control game. The way to beat Uro is with Relic of Progenitus. And because I think Uro is still so relatively popular in the metagame, you need to be playing at least 3 Relic of Progenitus in your sideboard right now. I'm playing 4, but I think 3 minimum is very important, because if you get one of those relics against them, the game's basically over. If you keep eating their graveyard, it's a beating. They can't escape Uro, and if they can't escape Uro, they actually have almost no chance of beating you. I'm serious. Uro is everything in this matchup. If they cannot escape this card, then they're literally just going to run out of cards eventually. They'll play stuff, exchange stuff, and then boom, eventually they'll have nothing else to do. It interacts with other cards though, like Wrenn and 6, of course, bringing lands from the graveyard back to their hand, really good value. What else? Also interacts with not only Snapcaster Mage, but also Mystic Sanctuary. So Mystic Sanctuary, very popular card in basically these control Uro piles, and is able to keep recurring Cryptic Command from the graveyard. And I would say, if we do not have a counterspell in hand, this Cryptic Command plan is very, very strong. Or I should say, if we don't have counterspells or a Relic of Progenitus, because the plan here is the Cryptic Command tap our team, bounce the Mystic Sanctuary back to their hand, replay it on their turn, put Cryptic Command from their graveyard back on top of their deck, and they basically can stall, not exactly forever, but if they have a Jace or some other way of drawing the card off the top of their deck, play a spell, remand, put it in their deck, draw the card off the top of their deck, they can do a pretty good job slowing the game down, or to a point where they can stabilize. So the only other card that you have to really be concerned about is Cryptic Command, because there's a point where, as you start putting stuff on the battlefield, you'll kill the opponent. I would say don't play too patiently. Like, look at the sweepers in this deck. There really aren't that many. And like, if like blue-white is playing Bant is playing anywhere between 1 or 2 Supreme Verdict. All the other verdicts you can counter. I mean, here's Explosives. That's something to deal with. Like, let's look at a 4-color Uro deck. How many Supreme Verdicts are in this deck? 1 Supreme Verdict here. And like no more in the sideboard. And I would just say, don't play too patiently, because if you do, you're not going to close out the game enough, like quickly enough. You actually need to put somewhat like 3 creatures on the battlefield, attack, because if you don't, I mean, play patiently if you can, but in general, I will dump creatures on the battlefield, especially if I don't have an Ether Vial, because after the Uro hits the battlefield, even if it doesn't escape, gaining 3 life, drawing more cards, it can reach the game can reach to a point where your opponent does stabilize. So that is not actually very good at all. So yeah, against Uro decks, Relic of Progenitus, and even just some counter spells. That's it. Whether it be Deprive, Force, and Negation, doesn't matter. Humans hasn't changed. My impression is if you want to beat humans, you should be playing Simic, as Simic has the best chances, given the fact that Simic is just faster, more lords, and more power at a lower converted mana cost. Mono Blue will still do fine, but Simic is definitely the way to go. And the more humans there are in the metagame, the less you want to have Force Negation in your main deck. As hard as that is right now, because there's a lot of combo decks. But generally speaking, humans is just still a humans thing. Maybe keep a lookout for Skyclave Apparition in the sideboard. It's a new card that they can be playing with. But aside from that, like, everything else is pretty normal, pretty stock for the last, I don't know how long. It's a creature battle. So the only way you can... Maybe overall, if you're building your 75, make sure you look at your sideboard plan versus humans. Make sure that you have no dead cards in the main deck, because as we have here, humans is considered like number 2 in the metagame. I don't know if I'd really give it number 2, but there's so much combo coming around right now that humans definitely is going to rise to the top, because humans eats up combo for breakfast between Meddling Mage, Kitesail Freebooter, and stuff like that. So more lords, and also 1-drops. If you're playing a version without 1-drops, you're just handicapping yourself against humans. You really need to compete at their mana, and you don't want to be clunky. And that's why I'm playing, if we look at my list right now, that's why I have like Benthic Biomancer here in Mono Blue, and why I've actually been on Simic for a very long time, because I think my Simic versions have the lowest converted mana cost that can compete with humans. Not super mandatory, depends on your metagame, but these are, of course, we're looking at things that you should be thinking about. But humans hasn't really changed all that much. Gruul mid-range. Wow, only... Oh, yeah, okay, 4. I thought I saw 2 Arbor Elf. So, this deck is all about mana. It's all about, like, ramping. And my simple advice is make sure they don't have mana. So, if you have the option, dismember Arbor Elf. Like, don't wait to dismember. Like, these things aren't even very good things to dismember. Dismember Bonecrusher Giant, you're going to take 2 damage for targeting it. Dismember Seasoned Pyromancer, that's not good value. Dismember Bloodbraid Elf, that's not good value. You can't dismember this unless you attack and they block, but if they block, then they get some value out of it. And this version is not running... Like, the best thing to dismember is, like, Stormbreath... Not Stormbreath Dragon. The Dragon! Where's the Dragon? There we go. Glorybringer. Right down here. This would be the other target, but honestly, attack the mana. If they can't get to 3 to 4 mana, they're gonna die. They're gonna be slowed down so much. They depend on ramping. So if you go turn 1 dismember on the Arbor Elf, that can be the game sometimes, especially since they really needed that synergy with Utopia Sprawl. So, and again, I would honestly attack their mana at all costs. If I have a lot of mana in my hand in Aether Vial, I will forego playing Aether Vial to dismember the Arbor Elf. I've done that on camera and won. So I would definitely do that. In the event that, like, you don't have dismember, or, like, in the event that somehow you couldn't play it and they get the mana, then whatever, deal with it. Don't kill the... If it's too late, don't kill the Arbor Elf. Kill, like, the bigger stuff, like the Storm, like Glorybringer, or even Bloodbraid Elf. I mean, it's not good value to hit the Bloodbraid Elf, but, it's better than getting hit for 3 damage every single turn. But also, remember, you can Spreading Seas the land that they put Utopia Sprawl on. That's very important. Whenever Enchanted Forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of the chosen color to his or her mana pool. And the deal is, maybe I can enlarge this. The deal is that if the land isn't a forest anymore, it's an island, then Utopia Sprawl falls off. So that can be a huge beating. Another thing is keeping them off double red can be important. So normally I won't go out of my way to use a 2nd or 3rd Spreading Seas unless I know my opponent's choked on mana. Like if they had a land drop for the turn, but they didn't actually play one, I would start attacking their red mana, because as you see, they need double red for Chandra, they need double red for Seasoned Pyromancer, they need double red for Pillage, they need double red for Glorybringer. Where's our Glorybringer? There's Glorybringer. So they need double red for a lot of stuff. Oh, Dismember actually has one other role. It's good at hitting Magus of the Moon, so it's not too bad there. Because even if all your lands are mountains, who cares? You can still kill them. What else? If your opponent has open mana up, I would try my hardest not to get stomped by Bonecrusher Giant. You can't do much about Lightning Bolt, because Lightning Bolt will kill almost everything. But if you have some opportunity to, like, pass the turn and flash in Merfolk Trickster, and you have Vial on 2, and then on your turn you can cast a Lord to protect your Trickster, and if they stomp the Trickster, then you Vial in another Lord. Like, if there's some way you can patiently protect your creatures from stomp, I might do it. Or at least pass the turn when they have 2 mana up, and they clearly have nothing else to do, and then once they tap out, now start deploying the creatures. If you can at instant speed. If you can't, if you're at sorcery speed, you don't have Vial, then you just have to send your creatures out there and let them die. But it really, this can be played around. That's about it. So stifling their mana is hands down the way I beat this deck. Like, I don't know, more than 60% of the time. Because trying to go toe-to-toe with it when they get their mana is just near damn impossible. Gain 3 life, create beast tokens, draw a card. This is card advantage. This is card advantage. This is basically card advantage. They gain mana, they exile thing. It's like they're draining and gaining every turn, so you don't want that to happen. So, but you know, like as you see, 5 mana, 4 mana. Sometimes they can't even get to 3 mana if you kill the Arbor Elf. Like, they can be so dependent on these things so often. And also, it would be worthwhile to Trickster the Arbor Elf at your opponent's upkeep, especially when they're planning to play a Utopia Sprawl. If you slow them down 1 turn, it's golden. It's really golden. So that's the Ponza deck for you. Jund, what's changed about Jund? I want to say that there is some sort of change. Oh, they're playing Scourge of the Skyclaves. Remember, Merfolk Trickster just kills this thing on the spot. It's a star creature, so it'll remove all the abilities, and then Scourge of the Skyclave just dies. Tarmogoyf, Seasoned Pyromancer. I will say that... Okay, this deck is not playing Kroxa, but the more Kroxas that are in your opponent's Jund deck, the more reason you want to have Relic of Progenitus. So sometimes I'll just bring in like 2 Relic of Progenitus to deal with Tarmogoyf, but as you see, like, they can become more dependent on their graveyard with Seasoned Pyromancer and Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. And then with that, you actually want a ton of Relic of Progenituses because they are much more a graveyard-oriented deck. And aside from that, this is just Jund being Jund. My current strategy is I side out like 2 Vials. I'm actually doing what? I used to side out 2 Vials on the play, 2 Vials and a land on the draw, and I actually think maybe we should just be siding out 2 Vials, and I just bring in anything. You can bring in Brazen Borrower. Actually, Borrower is probably just like the best thing to do, because this thing is good against Plague Engineer, because it's a fairy. And other cards, I'm willing to cut Force Negation, and you can bring, and you, like, we can cut 3 Force Negation, bring in 3 Relic, and I think that's fine. But I think right now, I think between the play and the draw, I think I would just have 2 Vial. I'd just shave 2 Vial, and then that'd be a day. There's nothing really important that you have to look out for. Where's Kroxa here? Sure, Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Ugh, hard to position very well. But this card is getting popular. And if you Spreading Seas like any mana source, they're screwed. So I guess, and also, the mana sources I guess I attack the most often now are like red and green. I'm not really expecting Thrun the Last Troll, but I like stifling the green. It makes it hard for our opponent to play Tarmogoyf, multiple green spells. Sometimes they have Scavenging Ooze. Like this deck has some Liliana the Veils. Hitting the Seasoned Pyromancer is good. But whatever, you figure it out when you're there. Spreading Seas is great. Azorius Control. Is there an Azorius Control deck right now? Really? I didn't know that was putting up results. All the Control players complaining that Control is dead. And here's your Azorius Control deck. Well, against them, you're just going to want to side out like a land or 2, because they are a Path to Exile deck. How much are they using their graveyard? You just want to bring in all the counterspells, I guess, to beat their counterspells. This is another matchup where if you have Cavernous Souls, you name Merfolk, you might just win the game on the spot. Makes Logic Knot crap, Mana Leak crap, Archmage's Charm crap, Cryptic Command garbage, just old battle around. They might bring in some Ether Gusts if you're a Simic deck. Really not much I want to say about this list. I would not bring in Relic. Like, they don't see... You might be able to bring in 1 Relic, I guess. Oh, no, you still need to bring in some Relics, because you have to deal with Mystic Sanctuary. I forgot, that's still a thing. So if you have room, but outside of that, just like side out one land, bring in all the counter spells, take out Spreading Seas. That's the usual thing. And very similar, like the Uro piles, the matchup generally just comes down to how well your opponent can tap your team down with Cryptic Command until they can stabilize. But I would definitely bring in all the Force Negations. I would Force Negate any one of these Planeswalkers. I would 2-for-1 myself in a heartbeat. 2-for-1 myself in a heartbeat. And also, we gotta try to counter Terminus when we can. Mill. Okay, so I have some interesting things to say about Mill. The deck, most of the decks are pretty heavy on 1-drops. Hedron Crab, Ruin Crab, Bloodchief's Thirst, Cling to Dust, Expertate, sometimes Surgical Extraction, Fatal Push, Visions from Beyond. So bring in Chalice of the Void. This is a really good matchup for Chalice of the Void. Just bring this in and they'll like... They can keel over for the most part. Especially if you're on the play, because then they can't get the further crabs out and stuff like that. So Chalice of the Void, very, very strong in this matchup. I would also keep all 4 Dismembers in. So I would side in maximum Dismembers, which you would think, well, why would you do that? Because you really need to kill these crabs. They can add up to a lot of milling. You know, turn 1 crab, turn 2, play another crab, fetch land, crack. That's 12 cards right there. If they have 2 crabs out, that's 12 cards you lost out of 1 fetch land. And if they do that every single turn, they'll do a pretty good job of milling you. So Hedron Crab. Another thing is you want to pay attention to your graveyard. And pending what's in the graveyard, that's what you should play from your hand, because they've got Expertate or Surgical Extraction in their deck. And because of that, if you... Like, let's say I have Lord of Atlantis in my graveyard because they milled it, and I have a Lord of Atlantis in my hand. So if I have the choice between Master of the Pearl Trident or Lord of Atlantis, I want to play the Lord of Atlantis. Because if my opponent decides to Expertate the Lord of Atlantis in my graveyard, or Surgical Extract it, somewhere down the line, they're going to get the card from my hand. This matchup is partially an attrition-based matchup, so you don't actually want them to do that. So anyway, I would definitely pay attention to the graveyard and then prioritize playing creatures from pending what's in the graveyard. And also you want to prioritize, let's say I have Lord of Atlantis and Master of the Pearl Trident in my hand. I have 3 Master of the Pearl Tridents in my graveyard and 1 Lord of Atlantis. You should try to play your Lord of Atlantis, because that is way higher likely to be an Expertate target, because that means there's 3 Lord of Atlantises either in our hand or in our deck that our opponent can take. They're not going to Expertate or Surgical Extract the Master of the Pearl Trident that has like 3... Well, there's 3 Master of the Pearl Tridents in the graveyard. So what are the odds we have the one in our hand? So anyway, try to consider those things when you're playing your creatures. Stuff like that. Counter spells are also very good because you only have to counter like 1 Archive Trap or 1 Glimpse the Unthinkable, and that sets them way back. Another strategy I'm using right now is siding up to 64 cards. So let's take the Simic list, for example. I would side out 4 Spreading Seas. I would bring in Brazen Borrower, I'd bring in Dismember, I'd bring in my counter spells, and that's it. So I would take out 4 Spreading Seas, side in 2 Brazen Borrowers, a Force, Dismember, 4 Chalice of the Void. By the way, if you do not have Chalice of the Void, you can bring in Relic of Progenitus, because keeping the graveyard clean will prevent Visions of Beyond from getting online. And some lists play that stupid card, Crypt Incursion. Here it is. Exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. You gain 3 life for each card exiled this way. This card is very good against us. If, yeah, so, but, no, it's, Chalice on 1 and Relic is a non-bow, and I think Chalice on 1 is way more than enough to beat them, so that's good enough. But if you don't own the Chalice, go with the Relic of Progenitus. So, yeah, and sideboarding up to 64 cards, which is a legal thing to do. You can play more you can put more cards into your deck post board. That's what I would do against Mill. And don't worry, it's not going to water your deck down like almost at all. It's not going to change much. It'll be like taking out 1 land against Jund or something. It won't be that big of a deal. Okay, Eldrazi-tron. Hopefully your deck is already built pretty well for Eldrazi-tron. So Eldrazi-tron is it's a tough matchup. I can't claim that I have a winning record against it, against any good players. Walking Ballista is a problem. These are all problems. Everything is evil. I am still currently Force Negating Expedition Map on turn 1. They will either get a bunch of mana, or they will go get Blast Zone, which will also wreck you. I mean, there's a lot of cards in this deck that wreck that wrecks you. See the Blast Zone, they got Cavern of Souls, Scavenger Grounds, it doesn't really matter very much. It depends. If your opponent clearly brings in Pithing Needle and Sorcerer's Spyglass, I would shave two Ether Vials in that matchup. But basically, there's nothing new to expect. You basically want to force negate Karn the Great Creator. I will side in all my force negations in this matchup, or I force negate an Expedition map and hope it mana screws them. Matchup is pretty bad. Oh, I think I'm willing also to force negate a Maze Mind Tome. Because this card is just way too much value. It ends up drawing them tons of cards, scries for everything that they need, and they gain 4 life. I think that's ridiculous too. So not going to have any of that crap. So those are all things worth force negating. So cards I might take out. I might take out 2 1-drops, 2 Ether Vial, or you can take out all the 1-drops. But I do like the 1-drops to some extent because of... I don't have too many 1-drops, but it's nice to have a little bit of power on the battlefield. Eldrazi Tron is a tough matchup though. Hopefully you've seen that matchup many times. Grixis Death Shadow. I mean, I treat it like, well, they got Scourge of the Skyclaves. Again, Trickster just blows it up. And Death Shadow. Just treat it like Jund, for the most part. They're like aggro Jund. I side out some of my Ether Vials. I side out 2 Ether Vials. Now, I don't know about this for sure. I have to start playtesting this, but I am... And you don't have to do this yourself. You just wait for me to experiment. But I think I need to start taking the draw with Simic Merfolk, that is less threat dense, against Grixis Death Shadow, just so I have 1 extra card. Because if I'm ever on the play and I mulligan and they don't, I just get ground out like every single time. So, and I don't think they're so fast that I can that I'll lose if I'm on the draw. I think it's just better if I'm on the draw and I get that extra card. And they are potentially down. They're not only down a card, but if they mulligan, then they're way down. Things to... I don't think there's anything... Oh, Mystical Dispute. This is the only thing that I get, like, surprised by. Because usually they don't have any counterspells for our creatures. But now they have Mystical Dispute. They do bring it in against you. They usually also keep Stubborn Denial main deck. So just keep that in mind. Which is why I personally do not bring in Chalice of the Void against Grixis Shadow. I find that I lose all the time. It just gives them more Stubborn Denial targets, which is just brutal. And also, they're going to be increasing their curve, like post-board. They're going to bring in Engineered Explosives. They're going to they might bring in some number of Cleansing Wildfire to deal with Mutavault. They'll bring in Collective Brutality, Kolaghan's Command, Liliana of the Veil, Mystical Dispute, Plague Engineer. Like, Chalice on 1 is just not going to do anything. Or you'd have to be lucky for it to do something, because they're upping their curve significantly post-board, so they're not so weak to Chalice. But you have got to grind them out. And just, I guess, be prepared for Plague Engineer. You got to have some... I mean, I always have 4 Dismembers post-board to be Gurmag Angler, sometimes Shadow, and Plague Engineer. Blue-white, I think this is Death and Taxes. Leonin Arbor, Mystical Dispute... Oh, new Death and Taxes deck. So, most important thing is to have Dismember. If they play Giver of Runes, I guess you just have to Dismember it on the spot. If they don't have Giver of Runes, Stoneforge Mystic is usually pretty easy to beat. Stoneforge enters the battlefield, gets Batterskull, put something in play, then you Dismember the Batterskull, and then that's it. And there's nothing else to be said about it. Usually try to let my Stoneforge opponent hang themselves. But if they play like Giver of Runes immediately, let's say they play Stoneforge Mystic, get Batterskull, then they Violin Giver of Runes. At that point, I might Dismember the Stoneforge Mystic to slow them down as much as possible, and then they're hopefully just stuck with a Batterskull in hand and they can't get it in play. Not much to say about this matchup. You got to be careful about your Spreading Seas, because they can have Ghost Quarter in play, and if they have Ghost Quarter, if you Spreading Seas another land, they can just Ghost Quarter their own land, and it doesn't do anything. So that's... But hold on, but this is the blue-white version, so is it blue-white? No, it's just but white. It's the white version. Anything in the sideboard important to mention? Not really. It's mostly a Death and Taxes deck. Go for it. Go get them. Just be careful. Okay, the only thing I would say, you got to be careful when their Vial is on 3. Because you got to be careful about making those... this is Azorius Control. You have to be very careful about making your attacks when your opponent has mana up, like if your opponent has the ability to play like Violent Flicker Wisp and then blink your Spreading Seas, just be careful about those things. But at the same time, I don't want you to be too patient. Another thing is if they find Sword of Fire and Ice, prioritize putting Lords in play, because this thing will, when it deals damage to you, to a player, it'll deal 2 damage to any target. So usually they start shooting down your creatures. So prioritize Lords in this matchup. Also, you can block whatever has Sword of Fire and Ice with a Mutavault. That is one way of getting around this and stall for time if necessary. What else? Very important. Tron. If you're playing Simic, I think you should be relatively favored, because if you're playing Simic, then you have like a really good turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and then you just kill them. Like all you need is 1 Commander Speaker, 2 more Lords, and that's a turn 4 kill. And you just need mild disruption between Force Negation and Spreading Seas sometimes. Well, if you play Spreading Seas, then you're not interacting here. Force Negation is usually enough. Keep in mind, they are bringing in Karn the Great Creator now, so I didn't always bring in Brazen Borrower, but I would definitely side in Brazen Borrower, because these Tron decks now are playing with 4 Karn the Great Creator. That does make the matchup more difficult, and if you can play more counter spells outside of like Chalice of the Void, that would be ideal. That would definitely be ideal, so you can counter Karn or counter the thing that Karn is going to go get, which is usually Ensnaring Bridge. But I would try to be as aggressive and aggro as possible in this matchup. What else is important to note? They do bring in Veil of the Summer, so keep that in mind. Sometimes you just have there's nothing you can do about that, but just keep that in mind. They have the one Ensnaring Bridge for you. They have Thrag Tusk. Anyway, I still like... I aggressively force and negate their Expedition map, especially when they mulligan. And what else do I do? I would take out all the... Whoops. Where's my deck? I would take out all the Dismembers. Dismember is not useful. Bring in Force Negation and Brazen Borrowers. Chalice of the Void on the play is okay, by the way, because it does hit... It used to hit more cards. Why isn't it hitting nearly as much? Ancient Stirrings... Oh no, it's still hitting the same number of cards. It hits 16 cards, which is not too bad. On the play, that's not too bad. Expedition Map, Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Ancient Stirrings, and also they're bringing in cards like Veil of Summer against us to protect their spells. So it's not that bad to bring in on the play. A few copies if you need more counter spells. Deprive would definitely be a good addition to this particular list, though. Aside from that, be aggressive, be aggro, get them dead as quickly as possible. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Prowess. Prowess is just a brutally terrible matchup. Or, I would say the mono-red versions and the blue-red versions, you're not favored. Unless you've got Chalice of the Void. If you don't have Chalice of the Void, there's nothing you can do about these matchups. You're just dead. There's nothing you can do. They're just too powerful. You have to get lucky. You would have to get really, really, really lucky. Things like look at the blue-red version. They've got tons of these Prowess creatures. This one, which not even Prowess, if they cast the spell, they just get the mana permanently. They get the counter permanently with Sprite Dragon and as haste. And then another thing is Stormwing Entity just keeps the gas coming. And like even you could have Chalice on one and they can still play this stupid card and then dig for an answer to Chalice. And they do have a decent chunk of answers to Chalice. They can dig for it with if they know you have Chalice in your deck, they can dig for it immediately with Opt. And they can get smashed to smithereens. So this list is not actually playing with... Oh, they have Kozilek's Return. Like, this is very brutal. It's a very difficult matchup to beat. So, this matchup is Chalice of the Void or bust. Now, that's for Izzet. Same thing, I think, with Mono Red. You'd be also in a lot of trouble. You might be able to hedge. Mono Red might be a little bit different if you have enough bounce spells. Harbinger of the Tides, Brazen Borrower, Ether Gust. Maybe you'll get by. But aside from that, that's very difficult. But let's look at the Is there Rakdos that we can look at here? Where's the Rakdos version? Maybe these are all blue-red. Where is this it? Or is this just Jund? Oh, this is the new Death Shadow Swift Spear version. Which I think you can just treat like a regular... I would treat it more like... Jund... Actually, this one? Actually, this version? I think if you see mutagenic growth in these decks, and Lava Dart, I think that's safe to say that you could bring in Chalice of the Void in this version. I think Chalice hits this deck hard. What do we have in this? One Abrade, one Kolaghan's Command. That's not enough artifact hate. So if you start seeing like Mutagenic Growth and Lava Dart, you might have the green light to bring in Chalice of the Void against them. But otherwise, there is a more patient version of Blitz, of like Prowess. I can't see it right now, but there is a more patient Rakdos version, and in the more patient Rakdos version, you could get away with Relic of Progenitus because it's playing with, I think, Kroxa, more hand disruption. It's just more it's more Jund-like, if anything else. So there's that. Bogles, again, Chalice on 1 is good. If you don't have Chalice, have Lords. If you don't have Lords, have Master of Waves. Honestly, I think you need Chalice in this matchup. This matchup's getting tough. There's a lot of games like that are just not in your control. They just have the hand. You don't have the hand, and then they steamroll you. Not much you can do about that. Important to note, well, you can bring in bounce spells. So I wouldn't bring in Aether Gust because it's so narrow. But if you bring in Brazen Borrower, and your opponent plays, let's say, Rancor into Daybreak Coronet. Daybreak Coronet says, enchant creature with another aura attached to it. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. In that case, if you Brazen Borrower the Rancor that was on them, this will fall off. So that's an important interaction to know. And what else is important? Force Negation is good. I usually side out Silvergill Adept here because Silvergill Adept is not... This matchup's not about card advantage. This is a race. You'll die with cards in hand, so drawing more cards is not important. What's important is getting as much power on the battlefield and attack for as much as possible. And also Spreading Seas is pretty good in this matchup. Sometimes you can mana screw them really badly. If I'm on the play, I will play turn 2 Spreading Seas all the time. 100% of the time. Doesn't matter what's in my hand. Well, maybe I'll play Chalice of the Void over Spreading Seas, but... And also remember, you can play Spreading Seas, Chalice of the Void on 2. So you can go Chalice, on 1, and then you go Chalice on 2. That will nail all that glitters, Daybreak Coronet, and Spirit Mantle. So those are all good options. Dredge... Bring in Force Negation. Only Force Negation deals with Conflagrate. And I would just counter anything, really, that they play. If they play Cathartic Reunion, Force Negate it. If they play Shriekhorn, Force Negate it. Force Negate all that stuff. And I actually found that I have a pretty good matchup with Simic. Like, I can lure them out pretty comfortably. I have enough power at a low mana cost that I can just do that. And they don't have anything. They can't do anything about it. I'm sure Mono Blue would also do fine. Of course, take out Dismember. Worst card in the deck against them. Bring in just Force Negation. Counter Magic is not good against Dredge because you have to be tapping out all the time against them. Also, take out Brazen Borrower if it's in your main deck because this is a 3/1 creature. Let me illustrate. And you'll never attack into, say, Narcomoeba. It'd be pointless. So bring in your Graveyard Hate, your Relic of Progenituses, and Force Negations. Those are your best pieces of interaction. And I actually like shaving 1 or 2 Spreading Seas because flooding out on these is not good. You want more power. I would rather just power through the... I want some Spreading Seas, but if you flood out on Spreading Seas, it's useless against Dredge. They will kill you. Anything important to note here? Not really. This is mostly normal Dredge stuff. Burn. I don't... What happened? Some burn decks play with that new elemental card. That's a 6/6 constant Searing Blaze. But I think burn is still the same. For the most part, still the same burn deck that we always knew. I don't think there's anything surprising coming out of the burn deck against us. We should just expect it. I will say something about, like, Smash to Smithereens, Wear and Tear. I do prefer, if I have Chalice of the Void, I'll bring in Chalice versus them. I might even try to position my Chalice to get on 2, because post board your opponent, like, I may not even bother playing Chalice on 1 unless I was on the play. But even then I might not want to do it. If I have the mana, I will wait to play Chalice on 2, because if you play Chalice on 1, they might just wear and tear it away or smash to smithereens it away. But if you wait on Chalice on 2, it locks out both these cards and locks out the more important spells against you, which is Lightning Helix, Searing Blaze, and also Boros Charm, because Boros Charm deals the most damage. And there's a lot of 2-drops in their deck. So that's just something to consider. If I am on the play and I clearly don't have 4 lands in my hand and I have no way of interacting, I'll just slam Chalice on 1 immediately on the play or even on the draw and hope that'll be the best. But if I have the mana, I might be patient. And again, you also need to make sure that you have the hand that for Chalice on 2. If you have Cavernous Souls in your deck, you have this option. Like, here's Cavernous Souls. If you don't have Cavernous Souls in your deck, Chalice on 2 is going to suck a lot more because you're just screwing yourself. You're going to counter your own 2-drops as well. But if you have Chalice on 2 and you play Cavernous Souls on Merfolk, you will cast your Merfolk, Chalice will trigger, it will resolve, but it will not counter your Merfolk because Cavernous Souls. So anyway, that's going to be it for, I hope that is a good sort of a quick boot camp on how to approach the metagame with Merfolk. We're getting a lot of 5-0s with Merfolk. It's not being properly reflected here because there's too many of us are making 5-0s. We need a lot more here, like 1.4% of the metagame. We're above Infect and Jund Shadow. What are we up against? We're up against the Vile, Titan Vile, Delver of Secrets. But anyway, point is, we're actually doing really well. There's a lot of us going 5-0, like, constantly. So it looks like this deck is like in really good position. A lot of good matchups, a lot of easy wins, and just Merfolk doing what Merfolk does. So good luck, everyone. If you like this, thanks, Steven, for us. And yeah, if you like it, just let me know. Maybe I could do this on a regular basis. So from that, this has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about how to approach the metagame with Merfolk.